In this video, you and I are going to take a look at some administrative controls, both detective and preventive in nature. Let's begin. The administrative control of separation of duties is all about preventing any single individual from having complete authority and control of a critical system or process. We can kind of think of it like the buddy system for any critical system or process that needs to be done. For example, let's say this is Lois and this is Bob. And let's say we need a new user account in our system that needs permissions to some resources. So perhaps Lois is the system administrator and she creates the account, and then Bob, acting as the security administrator, goes ahead and assigns the permissions or the clearance levels for that user object. So what this type of separation of duties is doing is making sure that we don't have a single individual who can create brand new users and assign permissions to those users. There's kind of a checks and balances. Another example would be if we're going to create some software. We'd have a programmer who actually writes the code, and we have someone else validate it. So it could be two programmers. Perhaps Lois is programmer 1 and Bob is programmer 2, or vice versa. The separation of duties is all about making sure it's not the same person doing both pieces for any type of critical function in our system. Another example could be we have a technician who proposes some type of change that needs to happen, maybe to a firewall or a gateway or to an access control list, and then we have a manager approve that. And that would be with the proper change control and documentation regarding why it's needed, when it's going to be done, what the rollback procedure is, and so forth. All of those details would need to be presented to that manager for his or her sign-off of that change. Another example could be in purchasing. We might have one individual, maybe it's Lois, who makes a purchase requisition saying we need to order something, and it's a different person, for example Bob, who approves the purchase. See, otherwise, without that separation of duties, one person could say, yeah, I want to get this and I'm going to approve it. And in a corporation or any environment, we need good checks and balances. So separation of duties is an administrative control, and it's preventive in nature. We are preventing opportunities that might arise for fraud, as well as preventing abuse of the system. Another term that I've heard to refer to this is called two-man control. And you may have seen those movies where they have the missile that's going to fire off, and it takes two people, each with their keys, to turn the key in order for that missile to fire off. If either of those people do not turn the key, the missile doesn't go. And that's another example of separation of duties. Another administrative control is job rotation, and another very similar one is mandatory vacation. And the reason they're similar is that they are both administrative detective controls that will give us an opportunity to identify any type of fraud that might be happening in a system. For example, let's say that Lois is in role X with certain responsibilities, and Bob is in role Y. So if every 6 months we swap roles, so Lois only has access to role X for half the year, and Bob is only doing role Y with those permissions and responsibilities for that same half of the year. And in a big environment, we might have a large team of individuals where we're cycling through a specific role. If an individual in their role was performing some kind of fraudulent activity, once they were replaced, there's an opportunity to say, hey, what was going on here, by the new person in that role. So hopefully it gives us a better opportunity to detect or become aware of misuse or fraudulent activities. Now, mandatory vacations does the same thing. If we say that, okay, Lois, you have to go on vacation for 2 weeks with no contact to the company, no logging in, no calling in, nothing, then if there were some fraudulent activities that she was maintaining because of her absence for 2 weeks, a couple things are going to happen. One, we're going to have somebody else take over her responsibilities for those 2 weeks, and while she's gone, if she was actively involved in misuse or fraud of the system, it leaves an open door or a window for detection of that fraud that previously happened. The other thing these are going to do for us is going to force us to do cross-training. So if the cross-training has been done, we have a backup, if you will, for a specific human resource if that person is out of the picture. Hey, thanks for joining me in this video. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.